She's been talking to the feds. The words landed in Vincent Moretti's security room at 2:13 in the morning, and for the first time that night, the most controlled man in Chicago stopped moving. On the wall before him, 12 surveillance monitors washed the dark room in cold blue light, but Vincent watched only one. Danielle Brooks stood beneath the concrete overhang of a nearly empty parking garage, 30 feet from a gray government sedan, speaking to a man Vincent's security chief had identified as Special Agent Nathan Cole. Danielle, his executive assistant. The woman who had managed his calendar, protected his privacy, remembered every promise he made, and spent 6 years becoming so dependable that Vincent had stopped imagining his organization without her. Now she appeared to be meeting secretly with the very people investigating him. How long? Vincent asked. Marcus Hale, his security chief, remained beside the monitors. We confirmed 2 meetings. Maybe more. Vincent's expression did not change, but something colder settled behind his eyes. On screen, Danielle handed Cole a thin envelope. Cole opened it, examined the contents, then slipped it inside his coat. Marcus leaned closer. That looks like an exchange. Vincent said nothing. Silence had always been his sharpest language. The room hummed with servers and ventilation fans while rain tapped against the narrow windows near the ceiling. Danielle had access to almost everything that mattered: schedules, meetings, travel plans, internal communications, even the private routines Vincent trusted to almost no one. If she had been passing information to federal investigators, the damage could reach far beyond him. Yet betrayal was not what troubled Vincent most. It was how impossible it felt. Danielle noticed things other people missed. She corrected mistakes before anyone knew they existed. She had once rearranged an entire week of meetings because she sensed a negotiation was turning unstable from 3 sentences in an email. She never demanded recognition. She simply made chaos disappear. Vincent had mistaken that consistency for certainty. Marcus placed a second file on the desk. There's more. Vincent opened it. Inside was a resignation letter bearing Danielle's signature. The date stopped him. 3 days earlier, before the first confirmed meeting with Cole. She was leaving, Marcus said. Vincent read the opening sentence twice. Danielle had intended to resign after 6 years without giving him any warning. Something about that disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. He closed the folder. Where is she? Downstairs. She came back 20 minutes ago. Vincent looked once more at the frozen surveillance image. Danielle beneath fluorescent lights, facing a federal agent without fear. Bring her. 70 seconds later, the security room door opened. Danielle entered wearing a charcoal coat damp from the rain, her expression composed despite the 4 men watching her. Vincent placed the resignation letter beside the surveillance photographs. You have 10 seconds to explain. Danielle looked at the evidence, then at him. She did not apologize. She did not defend herself. Instead, she reached into her bag and placed a sealed envelope on the desk. You're asking the wrong question, Vincent. His eyes hardened. Danielle held his gaze. They're not trying to arrest you. The room became perfectly still. They're planning to make sure you never reach tomorrow night's meeting. 72 hours earlier, Danielle Brooks had been sitting alone outside Vincent Moretti's office with a resignation letter resting beneath her right hand. The Moretti headquarters had gone quiet after midnight, leaving only the soft hum of the ventilation system and the amber desk lamp reflecting across polished walnut. Danielle had written the letter 3 times before finding words that sounded professional enough to hide the truth. She told herself she was leaving because 6 years was long enough. Because she wanted something that belonged entirely to her. Because Vincent's new strategic partnership with the Langford family would change everything anyway. All of those reasons were true. None of them was the reason her hand trembled when she signed her name. Earlier that evening, Vincent had returned from a private dinner with Victoria Langford and her father. The partnership would combine political influence, legitimate business interests, and old family connections powerful enough to stabilize Vincent's organization for years. Everyone around him called it brilliant. Danielle called it inevitable. She had spent 6 years standing 3 steps behind Vincent, anticipating problems before they reached his desk, and knowing precisely when he needed silence instead of another opinion. She knew he took his coffee black before 7 in the morning, but added cream after midnight, because exhaustion made it taste bitter. She knew he rubbed the bridge of his nose when a negotiation was going badly. She knew that when his voice became quieter, Everyone else should become more careful. Somewhere between managing his life and protecting the order around it, Danielle had allowed professional devotion to become something she refused to name. Victoria changed that. Danielle would not become the woman quietly waiting for a man who had chosen another future. Whatever she felt for Vincent, she still had her dignity. She slid the resignation letter into an envelope and stood. Vincent's office door opened before she could knock. He emerged without his jacket, carrying 2 folders. "You are still here?" he asked. "Finishing tomorrow's schedule." His eyes moved toward the envelope in her hand, but Danielle calmly placed another file over it. Vincent handed her the folders. "Move Langford to 11:30. Push Reynolds to Thursday. Keep tomorrow evening untouched." "The private meeting?" Danielle asked. Vincent paused. "What private meeting?" Her fingers stopped over the keyboard. Danielle turned the monitor toward him. "Tomorrow evening, 8:30, Hawthorne Industrial Complex, Building 4. The entry carried Vincent's authorization code. Yet Danielle had never created it. Vincent studied the screen. Security probably added it. Security cannot modify your private calendar without my credentials. His gaze shifted to her. Danielle opened the appointment metadata. No assistant identification. No internal routing number. No originating device. It was as if the meeting had simply appeared. "Delete it," Vincent said. Danielle almost obeyed. Then she noticed the creation time. 9:14 that morning, exactly 7 minutes after the Langford partnership documents had entered their secure system. Coincidence, perhaps. Danielle had survived 6 years around powerful people by respecting coincidence once and investigating it twice. "I will handle it," she said. Vincent walked away, trusting those 4 words because Danielle had never given him a reason not to. She looked down at the resignation letter beneath her hand. 48 hours, she decided. She would stay 48 more hours, determine who had entered Vincent Moretti's calendar without permission, and then leave his world with a clear conscience. Danielle did not know yet that someone was counting on her to leave before she discovered the pattern. By 9 the next morning, Danielle had already found 3 things that should not have existed. The first was a gray sedan parked across from Moretti headquarters, legally positioned beside a coffee shop, but angled toward the building entrance. Danielle noticed it because the driver never entered the shop. The second was a temporary network contractor named Eric Palmer, whose authorization showed he had been assigned to replace 2 security cameras on the executive floor. Danielle had approved no maintenance request. The third was smaller, almost invisible. Vincent's private calendar had been accessed at 6:42 that morning from an internal terminal belonging to a conference room nobody had reserved. One strange detail could be coincidence. 3 were a pattern asking to be understood. Danielle carried her coffee through the executive floor as though nothing had changed. She greeted reception, reviewed correspondence, corrected a transportation invoice, and moved Vincent's 11:30 meeting with Victoria Langford into the East Conference Room. All the while, her mind arranged facts like pieces on a chessboard. The irregularities had begun immediately after the Langford partnership documents entered Moretti's system. That made Victoria the obvious explanation, perhaps too obvious. At 11:28, Victoria arrived in an ivory business suit with 2 attorneys and the polished confidence of someone raised around powerful people. She smiled at Danielle. "Mr. Moretti ready? He will be in 2 minutes." Victoria glanced toward Vincent's office, then lowered her voice. "You have worked with him a long time. 6 years. Then I imagine this partnership changes your workload considerably." Danielle heard no cruelty in the words, but they still touched the reason her resignation letter remained locked inside her desk. "Change is part of the job," she answered. Victoria entered the conference room. Danielle watched the door close, then turned toward the security station. Eric Palmer was standing beside an open equipment cabinet. He looked up too quickly. "Camera problem?" Danielle asked. "Routine upgrade." "Who authorized it?" "Langford Integration Team." Danielle smiled politely. "Of course." She walked away before he could see her expression change. The Langford Agreement authorized financial coordination, not physical access to Moretti security systems. Someone wanted the connection to appear legitimate. Danielle returned to her desk and searched the vendor records. Palmer's company existed, but the address belonged to a mailbox service 22 miles outside Chicago. The listed telephone number had been activated 11 days earlier. Then Danielle found something stranger. Palmer had submitted his building credentials 4 days before Vincent approved the Langford partnership. She stared at the date. If Victoria's family had planted him, they had somehow anticipated an agreement that was still being negotiated. Danielle pulled transportation records next. The gray sedan outside had appeared near 3 Moretti properties during the previous week, always within an hour of Vincent arriving. She checked visitor logs, contractor schedules, and camera maintenance reports. Each irregularity seemed to point toward Langford. Yet the timeline refused to cooperate. Danielle leaned back slowly. She had been asking who inside the alliance was watching Vincent. The better question was who had been waiting for the alliance to give them cover. Her office telephone rang. An unfamiliar male voice spoke before she could introduce herself. "Miss Brooks, do not hang up. My name is Nathan Cole." Danielle's hand tightened around the receiver. "You do not know me," he continued, "but I know you were planning to resign." Her eyes moved instinctively toward the locked drawer containing the letter. No one had seen it. No one should have known. Cole's voice remained calm. "And if you want Vincent Moretti alive tomorrow night, meet me alone." Danielle did not answer immediately. She listened to the faint office noise behind Nathan Cole's voice and watched Vincent through the glass wall of the conference room, seated across from Victoria Langford as their attorneys reviewed the partnership. "How do you know about my resignation?" Danielle asked. 6:30 tonight. Grant Street parking garage. Level 4. That was not my question. Cole paused. "You are exactly as careful as they said." The line went dead. Danielle remained still, receiver pressed against her ear, until the empty tone became unbearable. Someone knew about a letter she had never submitted. Someone had accessed Vincent's calendar. Someone had entered his security system before the Langford agreement was finalized. At 6:27 that evening, Danielle parked 2 blocks from Grant Street and walked the remaining distance beneath a cold Chicago drizzle. She had told no one where she was going. The 4th level was nearly empty, fluorescent lights reflecting across wet concrete. A gray sedan waited near the far wall, the same model she had seen outside Moretti headquarters. Nathan Cole stepped from beside it wearing a dark overcoat and the expression of a man accustomed to controlling conversations. "Miss Brooks, you have 5 minutes." Cole almost smiled. "Vincent Moretti is entering a partnership that will eventually destroy him." "Then you called the wrong person. I schedule meetings. I do not negotiate alliances." "You do much more than that." He produced a folder, but kept it closed. 6 years beside Moretti. Access to his calendar, transportation, internal meetings. "You know where he will be before his security team does." Danielle's face remained calm. "And you think I am going to give that information to you?" "I think you were already leaving." There it was again. Cole knew too much. He described her frustration as if it were evidence, suggesting that Victoria's arrival had finally shown Danielle what loyalty had earned her. Danielle let him speak. People revealed more when they believed they had correctly identified another person's weakness. "What exactly do you want?" she asked. "Cooperation." "Meaning?" "Schedule changes. Meeting locations. Nothing dramatic." Too careful. If Cole merely wanted evidence for an investigation, Vincent's calendar was useful. But the altered appointment at Hawthorne Industrial Complex already proved someone possessed access. Why recruit Danielle for information they could apparently obtain without her? Unless information was not what they needed. They needed Vincent to trust the information. Danielle lowered her eyes as though considering the offer. "If I agreed, how would this work?" Cole finally opened the folder. Inside were photographs of Vincent's vehicles, office entrances, and several Moretti properties. Danielle noticed one image immediately. Hawthorne Industrial Complex. Building 4. "Tomorrow night," Cole said. "Keep his schedule unchanged." "That is all." Danielle looked at him. "And after that, you walk away. Clean." The words settled heavily between them. Danielle understood. Cole was not asking her to reveal where Vincent would be. He already knew. He wanted her to make certain Vincent went there. "I need proof that I will be protected," she said quietly. Cole studied her, then removed a thin envelope from his coat. "Everything you need is inside." Danielle accepted it, allowing him to believe he had found the price of her loyalty. What Cole could not know was that 6 years beside Vincent had taught her something about powerful men. The moment they believed they understood your motives was often the moment they stopped watching closely. "I will do it," Danielle said. Cole nodded. From across the garage, a surveillance camera recorded the exchange. Danielle saw it reflected in the sedan's rear window. She knew exactly what the image would look like if Vincent ever saw it. She also knew she could not warn him yet. If Cole had access to Moretti's private systems, someone close to Vincent was listening. Danielle slipped the envelope into her bag and walked away. She had entered the garage looking for the person watching Vincent. She left knowing something far worse. The Langford partnership was never the trap. It was only the door someone had been waiting to open. Danielle returned to Moretti headquarters at 7:14 with Nathan Cole's envelope still sealed inside her bag. She did not open it in the elevator, the lobby, or her office. If someone had penetrated Vincent's private systems, she had to assume every camera and every computer could be compromised. Instead, she waited until the executive floor emptied, carried the envelope into a storage room with no networked equipment, and examined its contents beneath a single fluorescent light. There was no protection agreement, no official paperwork, only a printed route, a photograph of Hawthorne Industrial Complex, and instructions confirming that Vincent must arrive at 8:30 the following night. Danielle read the page twice. Cole had made a mistake. A legitimate operation would have documented cooperation. This was designed to leave nothing connecting him to her afterward. She folded the paper carefully and placed it inside a fresh envelope. Then she began working from memory. By midnight, she had reconstructed every irregularity from the previous 11 days. Contractor access, transportation observations, unexplained calendar activity, security maintenance, and the exact timing of the Langford agreement. The pattern was no longer hidden. Someone wanted Vincent moved through a predictable sequence, and someone inside his organization was helping make that possible. Danielle could not identify the insider yet. That meant she could not tell Vincent until she could control who heard the warning. At 1:48 in the morning, she deliberately accessed an old scheduling archive from her desk computer. 12 minutes later, Eric Palmer appeared on the executive floor claiming he needed to check a network panel. Danielle watched him through the reflection in her dark monitor. There it was. She had touched a system nobody should have been monitoring, and Palmer had responded. She finally had her confirmation. What Danielle did not know was that Marcus Hale had already noticed her unusual activity. At 2:13, Vincent's security team intercepted parking garage footage showing her meeting Cole. 70 seconds later, Danielle was standing in the security room facing the man she had spent 6 years protecting. "They are planning to make sure you never reach tomorrow night's meeting," she said. Vincent's gaze moved from her to the sealed envelope on his desk. "Open it." Marcus did. Inside were the Hawthorne route, Cole's instructions, and Danielle's handwritten timeline. Vincent read in silence. "You met a federal agent without telling me," he said. "Yes." "You accepted information from him." "Yes." "And you agreed to cooperate." Danielle held his stare. "I needed him to believe I had." Marcus stepped forward. "That is convenient." Danielle turned toward him. "At 1:48 this morning, I accessed an archive that has not been used in 14 months. Eric Palmer appeared upstairs 12 minutes later. Ask yourself how he knew." Marcus froze. Vincent looked at him. "Palmer is downstairs." "Then do not question him," Danielle said. Vincent's eyes narrowed. "You are giving orders now?" "I am preventing you from warning whoever sent him." Silence filled the room. Danielle moved to the central table and arranged the documents by time. "Cole already knew about Hawthorne. He already knew your route. He knew about my resignation letter, which never left my desk. He does not need me for information. He needs me because you trust me. He wanted me to keep you comfortable long enough to follow the schedule someone planted." Vincent studied the timeline. For the first time, suspicion in his face gave way to calculation. "Then I cancel Hawthorne." "No," Danielle's answer came instantly. Every man in the room looked at her. She pointed to the false appointment. "If you cancel it, they learn tonight that we discovered them. Palmer disappears. Cole changes his plan. The insider stays hidden." Vincent slowly leaned back. "What are you suggesting?" Danielle placed one final sheet before him. "Tomorrow, you give them exactly what they expect." Marcus stared at her. "You want him to walk into their operation?" Danielle shook her head. "No, I want them to walk into ours." Vincent studied Danielle's final sheet without touching it. Around him, men who had spent years protecting his organization waited for him to dismiss the idea. Instead, he looked at Danielle. "Explain." She moved the Hawthorne schedule to the center of the table. "Cole believes I am cooperating because I am angry enough to leave you. Palmer believes his access is still unnoticed. Whoever is inside this organization believes tomorrow night remains unchanged. We keep all three beliefs alive. Marcus folded his arms. And how exactly do we do that? Danielle pointed to the transportation schedule. At 7:50 tomorrow evening, Vincent's usual convoy leaves headquarters exactly as expected. His regular driver takes the normal route. His telephone remains active inside the lead vehicle, and the calendar continues showing Hawthorne at 8:30. Vincent's expression sharpened. While I am where? Somewhere they are not watching. Marcus shook his head. They will verify who is inside, which is why we do not give them enough time to verify anything. Danielle turned another page. At 8:12, I send Cole a message saying Vincent changed the entrance because Victoria Langford requested additional privacy. It is believable because the Alliance gives us a reason for last-minute adjustments. Cole will have to move resources or communicate with whoever is monitoring Hawthorne. Either way, someone reveals themselves. One of Vincent's senior advisors, Anthony Russo, gave a quiet laugh. You are building this around assumptions. Danielle looked at him. No, I am building it around habits. People protect secrets by changing behavior. Cole called me because he needed certainty. Palmer came upstairs because I accessed a forgotten archive. They react when something threatens their plan. Tomorrow, we give them something to react to. The laughter disappeared. Vincent remained silent, watching Danielle command a room she had entered hundreds of times carrying coffee, schedules, and documents. For 6 years, these men had spoken around her because they believed she existed outside the decisions that mattered. Danielle had listened anyway. She understood who interrupted when nervous, who checked his telephone when surprised, who needed details before agreeing, and who pretended certainty when confused. Vincent finally asked, "What do you need from me?" The question changed the room. Danielle met his eyes. "Trust me until tomorrow night. You met Cole without permission. Because permission would have created another person who knew. You let my security team believe you betrayed me. Because if they believed it for 1 hour, whoever is watching might believe it too." Vincent glanced toward Marcus. Neither man liked the answer. Both understood it. Danielle continued. "One more thing. We cannot cancel the Langford partnership yet." Vincent's jaw tightened. That agreement is why they gained cover. Exactly. If you abandon it tonight, you announce that something changed. Victoria is not our enemy unless evidence proves otherwise. Right now, she is camouflage. Anthony leaned forward. "And what information do you give Cole?" Danielle's answer came. At 7:50 the following evening, Vincent Moretti's familiar black convoy rolled away from headquarters exactly on schedule. From a private conference room 3 floors above the underground garage, Danielle watched 3 separate location feeds move across a digital map. Rain blurred the Chicago skyline beyond the windows, turning the city lights into streaks of silver and gold. Marcus stood behind her while Vincent waited near the far wall, dressed for a meeting he had no intention of attending. They took the first route, Marcus said. Danielle checked the time. "Let them." At 8:12, she sent Nathan Cole the message they had prepared. Vincent changed entrances. Langford requested privacy. Used the south access point. Nothing else. 3 minutes passed. Then Palmer's temporary security credential activated inside Moretti headquarters. Danielle watched the signal move from the service corridor toward an isolated network room. He reacted, Marcus said. "Not yet," Danielle replied. Palmer opened a protected communications terminal, and within seconds an outgoing connection appeared. Danielle compared the destination with the 3 pieces of information she had quietly distributed earlier. One schedule variation had gone to transportation, another to security. The third had been mentioned only during a restricted briefing. The leaked detail matched the security version. Marcus stared at the screen. Someone inside his own department had passed it forward. Vincent's voice became quiet. "Who?" Danielle traced the access chain. The answer appeared 2 minutes later. A senior security coordinator named Leonard Shaw, a man who had worked around Vincent for almost 4 years. Marcus looked stunned. Danielle did not celebrate. Finding one compromised link did not explain the entire operation. "Keep watching," she said. At 8:26, the decoy convoy approached Hawthorne Industrial Complex. Danielle expected Cole's network to concentrate there. Instead, something strange happened. Several tracking signals disappeared. Not moved. Disappeared. She leaned closer to the screen. Why would they stop watching Hawthorne now? Vincent stepped beside her. Maybe they know I am not there. No. If they knew, Cole would contact me. Danielle pulled up traffic camera access logs from the emergency routes Marcus had prepared that afternoon. One route had been checked repeatedly during the previous hour. Lake Street westbound, then south through an industrial corridor toward a private Moretti property. Her stomach tightened. Marcus, if Hawthorne became unsafe, where would you normally move Vincent? Backup Site 3. Which route? Marcus pointed at the screen. The same route. Danielle felt the entire pattern rearrange itself. Hawthorne was not the destination they cared about. Hawthorne was designed to trigger Moretti's security protocol. The first threat was supposed to be discovered. The convoy was supposed to divert. They wanted us to find the first operation, she said. Vincent looked at her. Why? Danielle brought up the emergency route. Because this is where they expected you to go afterward. The room went silent. Marcus immediately reached for his telephone, but Danielle stopped him. Do not use the standard channel. Shaw may not be the only one listening. Vincent was still at headquarters, but the decoy team had just received automated instructions to shift toward the emergency route. If that movement continued, whoever was watching would know Moretti security had followed the expected protocol, and they could adapt again. Danielle erased the route change and replaced it with a destination nobody outside the room had been given. Then she sent Cole one sentence. Vincent is moving exactly as planned. Cole replied almost immediately, good. Danielle stared at that single word. Too fast. Too confident. He thinks we are heading to backup Site 3, she said. Vincent moved closer. Then where do we go? Danielle looked at the three men in the room, then at the city map glowing before her. Every official location was potentially compromised. Every familiar procedure had become predictable. She selected a small downtown office owned through one of Vincent's legitimate companies, a place never used for security operations. Nowhere they expect. 30 minutes later, confirmation arrived that federal oversight officials had intercepted Cole's unauthorized communications after receiving evidence Danielle had quietly routed through an independent legal channel earlier that afternoon. Palmer and Shaw were removed from sensitive access pending investigation. The operation that had depended on secrecy was suddenly exposed to its own supervisors. Vincent looked at Danielle as the final tracking signals vanished from the screen. She had not defeated their plan with force. She had defeated it by refusing to behave predictably. Danielle finally released the breath she had been holding. Then another notification appeared. It was from Cole, sent less than a minute before his communication access disappeared. 5 words changed everything. You still missed one person. Danielle read Cole's final message twice. You still missed one person. Marcus immediately assumed it was a bluff, a final attempt to create suspicion before Cole lost access to his communications. Vincent said nothing. He had learned during the past 24 hours that Danielle became quieter when something mattered most. She returned to the timeline and studied every event from the beginning. Palmer had monitored the network. Shaw had leaked security information. Cole had coordinated the outside operation. 3 pieces. Yet none of them explained how Cole knew about Danielle's resignation letter. She had written it by hand, sealed it herself, and placed it inside a locked desk drawer. Someone was in my office, she said. Marcus checked the access history. No unauthorized entries. Danielle looked toward Vincent. Then it was someone authorized. The answer came not from a security report, but from memory. 2 days earlier, while Danielle had been arranging the Langford meeting, Victoria had arrived early. Danielle had stepped away for less than 5 minutes to speak with Vincent. Victoria had remained beside Danielle's desk. It was possible, but possibility was not proof. Danielle refused to make the mistake Cole expected. Call Victoria, she said. Vincent's expression hardened. Why? Because if Cole wants us suspicious, I want facts before judgment. Victoria arrived 40 minutes later with her attorney, visibly confused by the late request. Danielle placed the resignation letter on the table. Did you open my desk? Victoria stared at her. No. Did anyone connected to your family have access to this floor before the partnership was signed? Victoria hesitated. That hesitation changed the room. Her father's legal advisor, Charles Langford, had requested an early systems review through a private consulting firm. Victoria had assumed Vincent approved it. The consulting firm was Palmer's. Danielle asked for the original email. Victoria forwarded it. The authorization had not come from Vincent, Victoria, or Marcus. It had been created using the credentials of Anthony Russo, the senior advisor who had challenged Danielle's strategy the night before. Marcus checked the system. Anthony's credentials had accessed Danielle's office records, Vincent's calendar, and the contractor portal. Vincent's face became unreadable. "Bring Anthony upstairs." Danielle stopped him. "No." Vincent turned toward her. Again, she said calmly. "Because we are finished reacting." She forwarded the digital records, access history, and Cole's communications to the independent legal team already coordinating with federal oversight officials. Anthony was removed from sensitive responsibilities pending investigation before he realized the evidence had been connected. No confrontation, no spectacle, just consequences. By morning, the partnership with the Langford family was suspended. Victoria had not designed the scheme, but Vincent no longer wanted an alliance built through pressure, secrecy, and expectations neither side had freely chosen. 3 days later, the Moretti Leadership Council gathered in the main conference room. Danielle entered carrying her usual notebook and automatically moved toward the chair against the wall. Vincent looked up. "Why are you standing over there?" Every face turned toward her. Danielle glanced at the table. The chair immediately to Vincent's right was empty. "I take notes from here," she said. "Not anymore." Vincent pushed the empty chair back with one hand. "Sit." Danielle did not move. "Vincent, what is this?" He placed a formal document on the table. A correction that should have happened years ago. Danielle read the first line. "Deputy Director of Operations." Her eyes lifted slowly. "I did not do this for a promotion. I know, and I will not accept the title because I protected you." Vincent's voice remained steady. "You are not being promoted because you protected me. You are being promoted because you understood this organization better than people who were already sitting at this table." No one spoke. Vincent looked around the room. "For 6 years, Danielle Brooks was treated as the person who organized our decisions. This week proved she should have been helping make them." Danielle looked at the chair again. For years, she had stood behind powerful men while they discussed loyalty, judgment, and strategy as though authority belonged naturally to them. Now no one was asking her to stand behind anyone. She sat beside Vincent and opened the document. The room remained silent, but it was no longer the silence reserved for an assistant waiting to be dismissed. It was the silence given to someone whose answer mattered. 6 months later, Danielle found the resignation letter on her desk again. It was no longer sealed. Vincent had placed it beside her morning coffee before the executive floor came alive, and for several seconds, she simply stared at her own handwriting. The date carried her back to the night she had believed leaving was the only dignified choice she had left. Since then, almost everything had changed. As Deputy Director of Operations, she no longer waited outside leadership meetings. She led them. Department heads called her before making decisions that once would have passed over her desk without explanation. Vincent challenged her openly, listened when she disagreed, and never again confused loyalty with obedience. What had not changed was the quiet understanding between them, the one neither had named. "You read it," Danielle said when Vincent appeared in her doorway. "I did. That was private. It was addressed to me. It was never delivered." Vincent accepted the correction with a small nod. "Fair point." Danielle picked up the letter. "Why now?" He entered and closed the door, not dramatically, simply enough to give the conversation privacy. "Because the date bothered me." Danielle already knew what he meant. The letter had been written before Nathan Cole contacted her, before the false appointment, before any reason connected to danger existed. Vincent looked at her steadily. "You were leaving before any of this started." "Yes." "Why?" Danielle could have offered the explanations she had written 6 months earlier. Career growth, independence, changing responsibilities. They had been respectable truths arranged around a larger one. She was tired of hiding behind them. "Because of Victoria." Vincent's expression shifted. Danielle continued before courage could turn into caution. "Not because I disliked her. She did nothing wrong. The partnership made me realize what your future was going to look like, and I could not keep standing 3 steps behind you pretending that did not hurt." Silence settled between them. "Danielle, please let me finish." He did. "I cared about you more than an employee should care about her boss. I knew that was mine to manage, not yours to fix. So I decided to leave before those feelings cost me my judgment or my self-respect." Vincent looked toward the letter, then back at her. "You thought you were standing behind me. I was. That was my mistake." Danielle said nothing. I spent years trusting your judgment without giving it the authority it deserved. I noticed when you were absent from a room. I noticed when someone else changed my schedule. I noticed when you stopped leaving coffee on my desk after midnight because you were trying to create distance. A faint smile touched Danielle's face despite herself. You noticed that? Eventually. 6 years is eventually? I have been accused of being slow about certain things. She laughed softly, and something that had remained guarded between them finally became lighter. Vincent did not ask for an answer that morning. He did not turn her promotion into a romantic gesture, and Danielle would not have accepted it if he had. They took their time. They had dinner outside the office. They learned how to disagree without hiding behind titles. Vincent learned that loving Danielle meant respecting the independence he had once taken for granted. Danielle learned that standing beside someone did not require surrendering the ground beneath her own feet. Nearly a year later, on a quiet Sunday beside Lake Michigan, Vincent asked her to marry him. There was no audience, no business arrangement, no strategic advantage. Just a question from one person to another. Danielle looked at the man whose world she had once planned to leave and understood why her answer felt different now. She was not his assistant. She was not his reward, his obligation, or the woman waiting behind his chair. She was his equal, with a life and authority of her own. Yes, she said. Months later, when they stood together before the people they trusted most, Vincent did not promise to protect Danielle from the world. He promised to respect the woman who had repeatedly proved she could face it herself. She had entered his life managing his time, changed his organization by trusting her own mind, and changed his heart by refusing to sacrifice her dignity. And in the end, the greatest thing Vincent Moretti gave Danielle Brooks was not a title, a chair, or even his name. It was the respect to stand beside her without ever asking her to become smaller.